Hello, Orange Forest Focus. There's only goal difference separates Nottingham Forest and the Premier League relegation zone after that dire performance at Everton. We'll discuss the game and Forest complaint about it, the relegation battle, and a worrying injury situation in the company of, first of all, Dan Cook. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. There seems to be a strong Yorkshire-based contingent on the pod today, so I'm sure that's what all Forest fans want to see on the back of that game.
I can honestly say I'd not considered that, but it is good to have you with us. Former Reds midfielder David Prutton, how are you?
I'm good. Lovely to see you both. Pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Good to have you with us. Pete was going to join us, but he can't. But we're in good hands today. Looking forward might not be the right phrase, but I am sort of looking forward to reflect on the weekend and the state we're in. Dan, kick us off with just your general thoughts on the game, and we'll branch out from there as ever.
Yeah, I think you sort of can't ever go to Everton and concede the first goal. It feels like that's their kind of strength and their way of playing. So obviously to go and concede a goal after 2 minutes, you just make your life very difficult. And then after that, obviously we looked quite a little bit leggy, and you come on to the question marks about picking the same team again after playing so many games lately and all that. And we never really looked seriously like we were going to get back into the game. Like we had little spells where we would huff and puff, but it always looked like we were just struggling to find that bit of quality. And then going the other way, I suppose it's just the nature of the goals and the mistakes. Having seen having seen the one at Brighton as well, you just feel like one of those fragile teams again, don't we? And I think that's part of the reaction to the performance, because I don't think the result is that shocking, right? For us to go away to Everton and lose is not necessarily something to get too excited about. But I think it's more the fact that we've seen these goals on the regular basis that seem preventable or a bit daft. So I think that's where the worry comes from when you're in it, especially when you're down the bottom like we are.
Yeah, certainly. Just in general, Prutz, on the goals conceded, I want to specifically talk about the second goal to break down the madness of it. But when you look at the quality of goals that we've conceded, the timing of the goals in the last few games, but specifically here, does that worry you or not?
Well, I think when you get up to the start that Forest did, then it's always going to be tough. And again, following on from Dan's point, that what Everton are, especially at the new place, is a very, very workable Premier League side, isn't it? So it was always going to be tough. It's one of those, when you mentioned at the top about being where Forest find themselves in the table, that was actually, it's something we all know, but it's actually quite surprising given broadly Sean's come in and we think he's done a very good job. And there's been a real kind of sense of balance being brought to it. And certainly the games I've seen where Forest have looked more than capable of pulling away from there, it is quite surprising that within all that, it's still a very, very nervous position that they find themselves in. Yes, there's got to be a bit of context because there's lots of games left. But given within those games that you're talking about, any time that a team scores against you in the Premier League, you've got to make them work for it. And the general consensus from what you saw on at the weekend is not. And when you've got an attacking talent such as Everton do have, they've got some wonderful attacking players. Then to be able to ably assist them with inept defending, poor decision making, not having your best team out, means that it's always going to be a very, very, very tough task. And I think there will be certain elements of the goals that were conceded on the weekend where Forest fans will just be pulling their hair out, because what Forest have been so good at back in the Premier League, particularly with Milinkovic and Murillo, is looking very, very solid at the back. And seemingly you take one of those out at the moment and it really does unsettle what's going on in that back line, doesn't it?
Yes, we will talk about the injury list in more depth. Forest got the biggest injury list in the league at present, and we'll look at the league table at the bottom end and the form table before we finish, certainly. I just want to ask Prutz in a bit more detail about the second goal. Dan sent me a couple of stills last night. I've added one. It's pretty much as bad as it gets, really, in terms of the timing of the goal and the circumstances of it. For people who are listening, not watching, or are watching as well, there's a still on screen. Amari Hutchinson has just lost the ball. Is that a really dangerous position to be in, Prutz? There's a big gap between Anderson and Sangare. Is that okay? Is someone made a big error there?
The thing that I love about Elliott is that he takes chances in possession. He's there to put the ball at risk. But if you're going to put the ball at risk in a midfield, then you need Sangare to be further across. I think the reaction from Amari to giving the ball away isn't a great one, but there's a sense of frustration there. Then it's about how you react to that, because suddenly what you see now then is a Forest side. Guys, look at that. The distance is there between, first and foremost, the defence and the central defenders. The way the defence reflects where the midfield is, and then whether they're in touch with the top end of the pitch. You've got the spaces there are just far too big. If Sean and Ian Wone and Stoney are looking at these today, which undoubtedly they would have been over the course of the weekend, you're looking at a team there. When I say that's not in control, I don't mean that in the natural sense of it of being out of control, but they are that far away from each other that they're not being able to cover any part of the pitch succinctly. So there's a big gap, which then becomes an even bigger gap when you get a central defender coming out of there. I said to you before he came on, and it's a bit agricultural, but he's either got to completely wipe that Everton player out or win the ball. If you're going to do neither of those, you retreat. That's the big thing. If you've got players running towards you like that, which ends up being, 3v1, you've got to go back. You've got to go back. And your goalkeeper might not thank you explicitly for that, but where else are you meant to go? You're meant to retract and get in front of where the cage is and protect that. They don't do that. They come out in ones and twos, which ends up in a position such as this. If you're Everton, you're going, what a wonderful flowing football move. But because we're looking at it from a Forest point of view, you're saying, back to what my original point was and Dan's was, that there's not these players. Iliman Ndiaye is one of the best ball carriers in the Premier League. A slightly big statement, but if you watch him play football, that's exactly what he's like. That's what he loves to do. So you've given him, 60, 70 yards there to run into, to do what he enjoys doing. The question comes off the back of this. Does he pick the right pass? Emphatically, yes, because the ball ends up in the back of the Forest net. And then you've got a goalkeeper looking round and one or two defenders. And you'd be looking at the pitch going, lads, where the hell's everybody gone? They've all committed forward, and you can commit forward in the right areas because you want to put the ball at risk, because putting the ball at risk creates chances create goals. They've done that without the security of someone as a holding midfielder to sit in, without maybe the voice in the back line to say, we need someone to sit in if we're going to go forward. And you end up like that, completely pulled apart with no real solidity to it. And then second goal goes in, and given the way that they were playing, it looked like it was an absolute mountain to climb for Forest.
On the first slide, Matt, just quickly, if you pop that up, I noticed that Everton were really it's the frame before this, but you can see that they are in like those four players around Hutchinson. They're almost waiting for that pass to go into him. Like they were aware of that. And I think Anderson just, because it's 45 minutes plus, and we're 1-0 down and we're chasing the game. I think it's one of those where it's you just take that extra little bit of a risk and think, well, probably nothing will happen. And then at this level, like we sort of said after the Wolves game, is Wolves were just not very good at punishing any mistakes, whereas Everton, like you pointed out, the quality of their players and everything. And even though Barry hasn't scored, typical that he scores against us after however many games of the season. But yeah, it was just like a combination of, like Prutz said, just being too split, too far apart, and then making that naive decision because it's late in the half. And it's game over then, really, at 2-0 down, I think.
Dyche complained afterwards, Dan, that it shouldn't have stood, said it hits the ref here. I don't know. The footage I saw was slightly inconclusive. Someone said in the chat that Sky said it did hit the ref. Any legitimate gripes there, Dan, or not?
No, because I get the rule is there for a reason, but really the rule's there because the ball deflects off at a different angle or it affects the play. And in that case, even if it brushes his foot, it doesn't actually change anything. So I think it's clutching at straws, that one, for me, in terms of actually like having an impact on the goal to really kick off about it. Which, my general frustration, I suppose, sometimes the rule overcomes the kind of the common sense bit of, does it actually impact the game? And in that case, no, I don't think we have a real complaint on that one.
I think we do have a real complaint. We'll come on to us actually complaining, but around the Tarkowski proper barge on Dan and Doy. Have you seen it yet, Prutz? Did you watch it?
Well, I was when you mentioned it yesterday, I was looking and I couldn't quite find what it was or what it was in and around of. So feel free to fill me in.
Well, you've seen it, Danny. I think we're waiting to take a throw in or something. For whatever reason, I didn't cover this very well on the post-match show because where I was watching this in a foreign location, legitimately, I missed the instant for whatever reason or another. I've seen it back. I think, to me, that is a red card, Dan. He properly smashes into Ndoye. It's not one where Ndoye's faking it because he's got no idea it's coming. Do you think it's a red card before we talk about Forest's complaint about it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the reason it's a red card is because do you want to kind of condone that? Do you want that to be something that you see regularly because players can get away with it? And I suppose it's a bit too forceful. Like if he gives him a bit of a nudge in the back or a shove, or and he goes down easily, then fair enough. But you can see when he hits him, you can see his neck kind of flick back, and he goes in pretty full force, Tarkowski. So I don't know what Undoy had done. There was like a little nudge between them as they were walking back. But yeah, look, I think what disappoints me with that is that the ref didn't have to go and look at it. I think it's serious enough for the ref to go and look at it, basically. And then make that decision on the pitch and make it himself rather than just be told no, there's nothing in it.
In follow up to that, Prutz, Rob Dorset tweeted that
I'm just looking at this now. Sorry, I mean this is not great viewing, is it? If you're watching someone in real time,
this is live view, but it's all fine.
It's the first time that I found it, and it's. I was just trying to work out the context of, as you're saying, what actually happened and why it happened.
I don't know. I mean, I still think just in isolation, I think that's to me that's a red card. I think.
So what would you put it under? Violent conduct?
Yeah, I think the force of it. Yeah, it's not like he's given him the first one. He gives him a shove. Fair enough. Let him know you're there before a throw-in's taken. The second one, he's just standing there and he puts his shoulder into Undoy legitimately hard. I think.
And the point that Dan makes is absolutely right, because there is a bit of to-ing and fro-ing, but inherently in that position, he's catching Undoy completely by surprise there. So, if someone's coming at you full on, maybe there's a sense you can get your body tense and ready to withstand the impact. The fact that he's gone behind him, so his neck goes back like that. I mean, I don't really know how to quantify that, because it is probably by definition a violent act, and it's completely uncalled for, is it? Like you said, there might have been a bit of whatever before it, but there's absolutely no need for that. Did he get booked or anything?
No, and he did get booked later in the game as well, which is a frustration. And he cleared a shot off the line, so that is a frustration.
I mean, is there an element to look at it with the ball not being in play? I know there's a whole structural kind of way of working out how you get to a certain. It's like when you see players at a corner pushing, shoving, dragging each other to the ground. The referee stands there, doesn't blow the whistle, says, "Look, lads, the ball's not actually been kicked, so can you all just calm down?" Because it makes it a real kind of hornet's nest for him to try and get to the bottom of. But the difference in what that is, as opposed to a very busy penalty area, is it's literally just those two going at it. I say those two. It's Tarkowski going at it off the back of Undoy, who's not ready for that particular impact. I mean, the fact that he's not even got a yellow card, but then I suppose, this is me debating it in my head right now, but the minute that it gets drawn to the attention that he might need sanctioning with a yellow card, then the officials have got to go, well, hang on, he's done it. Why has he done it? And what reason at all do you have for that player doing that to another player? There's none really. But yeah, I mean, I can see your point, Matt, because what I say, that it's a needless act of violence, if you like, and a player that's completely unprotected. It's just a strange one that, again, Dyche, you can understand why it's frustrations there, because there's no real place for it. Say balls.
Just when you think of, sorry to interject there, Proz. When you think of that Idrissa Gueye got sent off at Man U for the tamest slap on his own teammate. I mean, to me, that's much worse than that.
But I mean, then we get stuck into what the Man U shy of the definition of the laws is, because we understand about raising hands and hands in people's faces, and that covers a whole multitude of perceived sins. A little slap. I mean, when was the last time you saw a punch on a football pitch? Not really. Well, unless it was Millwall, Bristol City the weekend. My word, you see that all went off, didn't it, on the sideline? But that position, because you see, like you say with the Gueye one, it's laughable to a degree. I understand why it needs to be sanctioned, because it's an awful thing to kind of broadcast and show as an example. But it's not violent conduct, is it? That's shoving a player in the back like that who's not ready could have potential ramifications for his neck, for his back, the top end of his neck where it connects with his head. That's a lot more dangerous than what Gueye did. But because the perception is it's just a shove rather than a slap in the face, that's where the difference is. And maybe there's an element in there where when you do speak to officials, or there is a feedback with the officials, which they do have, I'm sure, with the PGMO, that as players, you'd go, well, hang on, I'd laugh off a little slap in the face. Wouldn't be happy at all with someone shoving me in the back when I'm not ready for it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The follow-up to it, Dan, is that Rob Dorset tweeted, Forest have made an official complaint to PGMOL, which I'm quite conflicted about. So I've just said there, I think it's a red card. But then this feels like we do this so often, or it comes out so often, which I think might be your point of view, that to me, I worry, and I'll throw this one to Prutz, it creates a bit of an excuses culture at the wrong time. But what's your view on us complaining, Dan, initially? Then I'll go back to Prutz.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't follow other clubs as closely. I don't know whether this happens with other clubs. I suppose, you know, when they complain, does it become a news story? So is that because we want it to be a news story, to kind of put a bit of pressure on, or is it because we've done that in the past with our tweets and all that it becomes a news story for Sky to sort of grab hold of and say, well, Forest have complained about it? Because I think most clubs would complain about that incident, but from my point of view, just following Forest mainly, I wouldn't see that they've done that, and unless it was like one of these major sort of potential rule changing things. So yeah, I suppose I'd just be interested to know why it becomes kind of a newsworthy conversation, really.
Maybe because it's Forest, I don't know. Prutz says this thing that, Forest have complained again. And then, like I say, the last thing I feel like you want to give players is when things are going badly is an excuse for, you know, the world's against us. And then you get that in your head and things get even worse. That's my concern about it. Well, do you have any take on Forest complaining again?
Yeah, I mean, I just looking at a couple of the comments, I can't think for 1 second there'd be a consensus that came away from Everton or watched the game thinking the referees cost us there by any stretch of the imagination.
We're going to come to that in a sec, yeah.
Players were poor. There's an element of fatigue, I think, in what we've seen. And as we've said, you afford a good attacking side, basically the freedom of your back third of the pitch. They're going to beat you pretty comprehensively, which is exactly what happened. I think you're right. The timing of it, when the team has been poor and been comprehensively beaten, does seem a bit, I don't know what's the best word to describe it, a bit small fry in the sense of it makes no difference to the result. I mean, you can walk down the hypothetical route of, well, Tarkowski gets sent off, they're down to 10, change of the dynamic of the game, etc. But there's so many variables off the back of a potential red card for their player for Forest to come away with 3 points. And I think subconsciously, maybe it gives the players a little, or the players that are prone to needing a reason to be able to kind of shy away from the responsibility. But I don't know. Going back to, like you said, about Rob Dorset's tweet, and I know Rob, and I think he's fantastic. And this is not me covering the backside of a Sky Sports journalist, but because of that backstory with Forest and tweets and PGMO and all that type of stuff, if you're a journalist and you hear that, there is part of you going, let's just drop this in, see what happens to the reaction to this, because that's what the story is, isn't it? It's a very kind of, it's a cliche and a stereotype, but it's Forest moaning again about the referee when they're not really. They're kind of going, this looks outrageous. Any thoughts? But Forest have lost at the same time. So yeah, it all comes together on what is quite a dismal day for the result, for the performance, and for Forest League position. Doesn't really help complaining about that. I don't quite know what's going to change with that. And hopefully it doesn't mean to say that Forest then become, again, that stereotype of a team that moans about referee decisions, because broadly this season, I don't think they have they?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we could have moaned a lot more about Igor Jesus at Anfield when it wasn't handball, I think, and we went on and won that game comfortably. Dan's internet connection is a bit ropey, so he's gonna jump back on in 1 minute, which is perfect timing for us to take a word for the Trent navigation. Utrecht up next. If you arrive before 5:45, 5:45 kickoff, you arrive before 5:30, you can get a free pint of Madri if you enter via the Big Shed gates. Also, over the road, the new bar is open for bookings now. It's really good. You're probably watching this and wondering, why is he talking about that when there's a random video on of the waterside? That is because it's under old management. It's now back under the control of the guys at the Nav. So do check out their website. You can book for Christmas and get involved in all that they have to offer at Forest's, I don't know, second most popular football bar. I don't know, behind the Nav. But there you go. It's great that they're under old ownership. So thanks as ever for their support. I assume I'm still advertising the Nav every week. Maybe I'm advertising the Waterside as well now. Who knows? Right, let's talk.
I've never heard that now under old management as a selling point.
No, I know. Nor have I. But yeah, good to have that in place. Right, we were going to talk about the style of play in that game, so I'll come back to that when Dan is with us. One of the questions I've got, Prutz, is how good actually are we to go from playing as well as we did against Liverpool to playing pretty averagely against Wolves but getting the win to putting in that performance? Is this a sign of a team that's in it for the long haul in terms of struggle? We've had 3 managers in a season. Did we all get a bit carried away after good form, which we'll come back to? I mean, what kind of state are Forest in, do you think?
Well, I think what Forest did so well last season was, first and foremost, it was the consistency. It wasn't getting carried away by big results against bigger teams or more established sides in the Premier League. And it was being able to grind out results against teams that you would presume Forest should be able to beat, given where their end of season ambitions were lying. So I think that's probably what Sean's trying to wrestle with, the inconsistency of what he's seen, especially within these 3 games. Great points being made about if you play against a Wolves side that could actually take the chances and weren't short on confidence, that's a different result entirely, you feel. But you look at the standard of what they did against Liverpool, and thoroughly deserved, even though, of course, all the chats about Liverpool being woefully out of form. They were there to be put to the sword, and Forest comprehensively did that. So that was, again, a joy to watch. And then you look at a game against Everton, which, given potential as well, what we saw between the 2 last season, where you've got 2 teams level pegging, Everton are just more consistent. There's less of the boat being rocked, isn't there? Given the fact that they've got a manager there that's been there for a period of time now. And Forest are reacting still, I think, potentially to shooting themselves in the foot with regards to these different managers. And that's Sean's biggest challenge, wrestling consistency out of this side. So you don't get a wonderful high of beating Liverpool in the way that they did, and a kick in the teeth of losing to Everton in the way that Forest did at the weekend. So that's the concerning part about it. I still think broadly the work that Sean's done with the team that he's got has been fantastic, and it was the right appointment, and it was the right direction to go in, again, off the back of self-inflicted wounds. So the real key point here is, given the games that are coming up, is to really drill down in what went horribly wrong at the weekend, and very, very quickly put a lot of that right.
Good to have you back, Dan. We were talking about a more general point now, but going back to this Everton game, which plays into a bit of what Prutz was saying, this was the first game I thought that was Dyche ball as advertised. Probably the Wolves game a bit as well, but so many long balls. The quality of our play was absolutely abysmal. We haven't actually seen that under Dyche, to me. I think we've been quite good in terms of attack. Do you agree? And does it worry you if you do agree about the kind of quality of our performance?
I sort of agree. I still think a lot of our goals have come from being fairly direct. And I think the difference between, say, the Liverpool game and the Everton game is maybe the clash of styles, in that Liverpool at the minute just seem quite shaky with dealing with those kind of moments of one-on-ones and second balls and set pieces. We saw it again at the weekend when they conceded one late on. I think they've got that fragility, that something's not right in their sort of defensive setup and dealing with that, whereas Everton are just really good at it. So if you go and play the same way against those 2 teams, you can end up with these results just through that, potentially. You know, in terms
play
of
that way, then, should you?
Well, exactly. So yeah,
it's the centre halves for 90 minutes, should you?
I know. So then it's kind of like, yeah, is there a plan B? Is there a different way of doing things? And this was a good test to see whether we could sort of punch up a bit, because so far, aside, if we didn't have that Liverpool result, then we'd have got the results in the games we thought we would. But to get out of this trouble, we're going to have to get some results against someone that's a couple of places above us. And in terms of what's coming up, that's probably, say, Fulham in the future, and then Everton again at home. And I suppose if we can get the result against Everton at home, it kind of wipes this one out a bit, and it would be a good turnaround. But yeah, I think we have been direct. I think we have played quite a lot of long balls or long passes, however, whatever you want to call them, but it's worked and it's been effective, and it's kind of what this team's been built on, and it's what we know. So it makes sense to do that. And we saw this a little bit last season as well, didn't we? In certain games, and one of them probably against Everton at home last season when we lost 2-0, and we went away to Fulham and we lost. You know, we didn't really look like we could play almost. It was like we were completely disrupted. And it certain games suited us when we could get that space in behind, and certain teams we just couldn't seem to lay a glove on because we didn't have that bit of like quality in terms of like patterns of play or things that would draw teams out in certain areas of the pitch to exploit others. We were very much needed space in behind, last man kind of football, and one pass kind of unlocks the opposition. So I think we're still lacking that. And I suppose the new players coming in were supposed to help that. The likes of Douglas Luiz, Zinchenko potentially had that bit of quality, but obviously they're out. Not having a fullback on the right that's a real attacking threat on the ball. I think yesterday there was more opportunity on that side of the pitch because you've got Grealish, who's not sort of known for his defensive side, and you've got Mikolenko, who tends to get forward more. But we didn't really hurt them on that side of the pitch. We seem to be concentrating more on O'Brien's side, and of all the things he's going to be good at, it's probably defending those kind of tackles and duels. And we seem to be missing that bit of opportunity to get in behind him on the other side. And yeah, it wasn't good. I thought against Wolves, the spaces were too far apart on the ball. Like you say, everything had to be quite long to try and find a player, and it allowed them to intercept it a lot. And it was similar again. I think, again, coming back to the fact that you go behind at Everton, you're going to struggle. And that for me is still a factor of it. So I think the reaction is a little bit over the top to some extent because that's a game that is tough. But we need a result against someone just above us to prove that we can go toe to toe with the teams that we're going to have to get 3 points again to get out of trouble.
Yeah, I think we played quite. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. The distinction between long ball and long pass is when you think of some of the goals we've scored. At home to Leeds, Murillo sweeps it out to Hutchinson. Against Man United, we show some good tactics to isolate Ahmad, and then again Murillo to Hutchinson at Anfield. Igor Jesus played so well at Anfield, it probably masked a little bit of long ball stuff. But against Everton, it was, to me, proper long ball. Gibbs-White could get nowhere near, anyone, but he couldn't get anywhere near Igor Jesus. The fullbacks were, it was just a bit of a disaster. I suppose the other thing that we haven't talked about yet that I want to talk about is injuries. And I think we've got 8 injuries, Prutz, listing here. I think Olaina, Murillo, Douglas Luiz, Chris Wood. That's 4 of your starting 11.
Yeah.
Dylan Bakwa, I think, could possibly be in there. We'll talk about some specifics. I know people in the chat are going to say, oh, you're just giving them excuses. But if you take 4 starting players out of what is a mid-table Premier League side on paper when all things are going well, to me, that does create problems, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that what we discussed off the back of last season and coming into this one and about all the drama with Nuno was Forest hopefully bringing together a squad that could compete a couple of times a week, both at home and abroad, but not have the drop-off that comes with changing that side, which I think we'd seen sometimes last season when it wasn't the out-and-out first choice 11 that was available for Forest. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's an excuse to mention it. I think it gives it context. I do. And let's not get too carried away in the sense of what Forest did last year. I'm sorry to go on about last season. Was almost a bit of a quantum leap from the point of view of where their progression was. A couple of seasons where you're really duking it out to stay there. And then you go and jump so far up the division that understandable expectations change. I totally get that. And that's absolutely, from a supporter's point of view, it's well within your rights. My word, you've been subject to some fallow periods, shall we say. So being able to kind of say, well, this is where we're going next, and this is the size of club we want to make sure we get back to being, I totally get. But yes, there's been changes in management, one unfortunate, one utterly disastrous. So now you're in a position where you've got Sean picking up the pieces with, as I said, the players that he's got at his disposal. Yes, big misses from the players that you mentioned there, that within the confines of what Forest have been, they are starting players, aren't they? They are key parts of what they bring, both themselves and to the actual 11 that start the team and the squad that is available on that particular match day. So there is an element of having to deal with that. There is also an element that every other football club on the planet has to deal with injuries and has to move forward and has to kind of create success against the odds sometimes. A couple of the things that and maybe it's comes off the back of a performance and a result such as this. And Dan's absolutely right to try and bring some balance to proceedings. there's a few comments where they're actually questioning the aptitude and the attitude of the players, which I don't think we've sat here and said that about Forest in a long, long time. No matter where they've finished in the Premier League, no matter what they've done to climb back into the Premier League, very, very rarely have I read fans saying they don't look bothered or there's a lack of commitment, which shocks me in relative terms to what getting shots in football is. But I've not seen that for an awfully long time. And the games that I've been at, and I've been privileged to have been at a fair few, I've not seen that. The games that I've watched, I've not necessarily seen that. Every player and every team can have an off day. Yes, it was an off day that was compounded by an Everton side being very good. The levels that weren't quite met at Wolves were helped by the fact that Wolves are in the position that they're in and couldn't finish off Forest. Yet you have the other side of it where Liverpool is just a glorious day out and a wonderful performance and a great all-round victory. So that's the bit that's troubling me a little bit. Are people getting carried away? You two, you can tell me this. You get carried away when things are great. You can get carried away when things aren't so great. But this squad of players, and not because I've met a few of them and spent a bit of time with you, immensely likeable, tremendously hard-working, and have been right for Forest and what Forest mean to people right now. So unless I've missed something, is there something a bit untoward going on with the commitment?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you go back to what Dan said. We started the game terribly and went behind, and it set a tone. And we started the game terribly against Brighton and could have been 5-0 down in that game.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a lack of attitude, of effort. Maybe it's a lack of quality in the replacement players that we've got. I mean, there's a huge drop between Murillo and Morato. I was going to discuss that. And then there's a huge drop between Savona and Olaina. I know Savona's doing well, relatively. But, I mean, do you think there's a lack of effort, Dan, or is it the quality, the drop between the best players and the players that come in? Is that more of an issue than effort?
I think under Ange you could have maybe asked that question and perhaps thought maybe there was a bit because it was such a change of style and the way everything ended with Nuno and all that. But I think under Dyche, we're at the stage of the season where players, for me, you would think just realise that the only thing they can do from here is improve things, because you've got motivation of World Cup squads and you've got so many things going on that would suggest why would you sort of turn up and throw in a half-hearted performance at this point of the season, because none of these guys want to be involved in a Forest team that struggles or goes down. And obviously Europa League and things is a big achievement if we can continue to progress in that. So I don't buy that in terms of effort or buying into what's happening. Maybe there's a few players that don't suit what Dyche is asking them to do a little bit in terms of some of the workload and potentially on the wings and things. I think some players probably have a different role than they might have thought they were coming into when they joined the club under how we played under Nuno, and then certainly obviously how we played under Ange. So maybe there's a few players that don't enjoy that way of playing as much, or doesn't get the best out of them.
Dan, sorry to butt in. Do you think it's a funny one, because what you hear is about Sean and working the players and really kind of going after them. And again, I was chatting to Ian Wone and Steve Stone before the Malmo game. It was lovely to see them both. And just as an aside, and this is not a PR campaign for them, two men that have seen it all in football, but were like little kids about being back. Absolutely, like rubbing their hands together. Like we love being back. We were pestering the life out of Dyche to make sure that he got over the line and got everything sorted. So there was a bit from a fitness point of view that they needed to address, which again surprised me given where they'd found Forest at that particular stage of the season. But Callum Hudson-Odoi, Alanga, so good going forward, but they always worked the socks off going back, didn't they? And whether that's because you had him in good partnerships with, say, like an Olaina, who really worked his winger, didn't he? Got past him, got back past him, got him to track back. There's not, and that was under Nuno. So you kind of going, they were a workman-like team, but had good quality. Is it then just maybe a question of quality then, Dan, in the sense of you're asking players that aren't as good, or players that aren't as good as what's gone, to work as hard as the players that went? Does that make sense? Because you look at Anthony, who had a move to another big Premier League football club. Does he earn that off the back of what he did at Forest? And not saying for one second that Forest are a stepping stone club at all in the Premier League, but they looked at him going, well, he works his socks off, he's good on the ball, he gets up and down. that should be an absolute prerequisite, shouldn't it, for anyone who comes into the side, regardless of who the manager is?
Yeah. I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's the work. It's, I think it's more. Well, there's two bits. The fitness thing sort of baffled me a little bit because obviously the narrative of this story is that we've kind of got so many games coming up that we needed to rotate and rest and almost, be conservative a little bit. So to then come in and spend a couple of weeks just running, and now we're seeing a bit of an injury list sort of appearing and hamstrings and stuff like that. For me, I do question that decision a little bit, whether or not it was a case of, look, okay, we'd like to play that way. We'd like to have those fitness levels, but where we are now, I think the difference between what Dyche does and what Nuno did is the kind of off the ball, the position. It always felt like we sat a bit deeper under Nuno and we let the other team do more of the work, and we covered a bit less distance chasing around. And under Dyche, we definitely press a bit higher up. There's definitely more workload in trying to hunt teams down, I think, in the opposition half more, which you like to see, but I feel like it takes you a couple of seasons to adapt to that fitness-wise rather than a couple of weeks. So I sort of worry about that injury side of it. But then when you come on to the quality of things, I think it's a little bit hit and miss with signings. We can talk about Ndoye and Hutchinson and the kind of pros and cons of that. But you can also look at Elanga, who's gone to Newcastle and struggled. And you can have a quality player in one system that takes a while in another. I think there's quality there, but I think confidence it seems to be the key, which is, again, strange to say because we've actually had a decent run of results, haven't we, lately? But there still seems to be that bit of confidence of players to fully work together in the team. And it just doesn't feel like a team. And I suppose that probably comes down to the amount of recruitment we ended up doing as opposed to who we've recruited, maybe.
If you look at, we've said this before, but Wood and Elanga had 37 goal involvements between them last season. 17 for Elanga, 20 goals for Wood. He probably had assists in there as well, so probably more than that, actually. And then Igor Jesus has come in. I actually think he's done really well and played really well in a struggling team, but he's got 1 goal and 0 assists. Amari Hutchinson has got 4 assists, which is fantastic relative to minutes. And Dan Ndoye, who we've discussed at length. And I do think long term, I wouldn't write him off, but he's got 1 goal, 1 assist so far. And Callum Hudson-Odoi hasn't done a lot this season. Dylan Bakwa has been injured. I mean, there's not many goals in this team, Prutz, is there?
No. And this, again, is that chat that came off the back of how you'd quantify Chris Wood and what he meant to the team, and then what he meant to the team moving forward at the age that he was. And having seen what he managed to do for Forest, I think we were on here talking about whether he was in the middle of what was an elongated purple patch, wasn't it? Or whether he was going to be a player that got you the same amount of goals again this season and maybe for the rest of... How long's his contract? Another 2, is it?
Another year after this.
Another year after this, which... And that sometimes is the debate that lies within football, isn't it? I mean, not going off on a Liverpool tangent, but the situation that Liverpool find themselves in with Mo Salah and him saying what he's saying and acting like the way he is, you reward a player with a contract. And Chris Wood absolutely rewarded and fully deserving of a new contract at Forest and an extended period at Forest. But age does catch up with the player. The fact that there's an alchemistic way of a season coming together with 2 wingers that played as well as they did, with a defence that was rock solid, with a midfield that was athletic, energetic, aggressive, good on the ball. And then you managed to facilitate a striker in Chris that people had doubts about that absolutely came up with the goods as and when Forest needed it. So maybe there is a timing element of it all coming together wonderfully well for one season. The big question and the big challenge comes off the back of that is when that team inevitably gets broken up and moves around, then you've got to replace the quality. And I would say right now, it's not been obvious that that's the case. I would sincerely hope that it's not the Forest of, 2-3 years ago, where suddenly you look around and you can't move for players. You think, well, there's too many players here for a start, and they're not good enough. The level between the first 11 and the players that comes in drops off dramatically. That was their big challenge, to get beyond that. And keep the players hungry that had been there and help create this success. Take away those injuries, I think, then you've got a slightly different incarnation and a different debate, given how good that team is on paper with a fit first 11. But again, it's no other. It's not anything that any other team isn't having to get their head around. Volume of games, when these games are, and the players that are fit and firing and ready and available. So that's the question mark for me is when you are defensively like you were against Everton, that's alarming. But tee that up with a team that didn't really create too much and really trouble the opposition. I mean, did the post as well, didn't they? Everton, King and Dewsbury Hall with that ridiculous effort. Could have come away with that with a 4-0, which from a confidence point of view, going back to Dan's point, can be quite damaging. But it was never going to be easy, was it? Building on last season was never going to be easy. Getting ahead of yourselves inside the club was something that they had to absolutely fight tooth and nail against, because as we know, the Premier League will bite you on the backside pretty swiftly. And when you've got teams, I mean, who saw Leeds' last couple of results coming? No one did. I saw Leeds against Forest. They were miles off it. You're looking at that game going, well, if that's one of the teams that's up against Forest, for Forest pulling away, happy days, sling them over your shoulder. You're beyond them. That's changed very, very quickly. West Ham as well. There's so much to be kind of concerned of. But again, without sounding like a PR for the coaching staff, they've got time. Broadly, I think they've done good work. It's where now these very well-remunerated players have to step up. And if, to all intents and purposes, what we're saying about the weekend is there was a lack of effort, first port of call is that gets completely addressed. Having sat with Elliott, having sat with Yatesy the other week, chatting away, I cannot think for a second you've got two players there at slightly different ends of their career spectrum that would remotely stomach a lack of effort in that side at all.
Do you think just on the age and the experience of the players we've signed as well is now it looks a little bit like almost like it's good recruitment for 2 seasons time,
and the location. A lot of them were from overseas league as well.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So the experience. It's not like we've signed too many Premier League ready. Like okay, yeah, you're not going to play every week, but you'll get some game time as a winger or a fullback. I mean, I suppose Zinchenko and Douglas Luiz are those players, but obviously their kind of injury records mean that they don't get to influence things that much. And now losing Yatesy as well, which is a bit more experience. So you got McAtee, Hutchinson, Bakwa, all quite young.
I absolutely agree, Dan. I think there's very good players in there. A lot of time for McAtee, a lot of time for Hutchinson. Whether you're looking at players that have, as you say, proven it at the Premier League consistently, no. By virtue, maybe, of not having the opportunity, you then get a player that comes in Hutchinson that doesn't make the European squad, and you just kind of get, and we're not talking chump change for these players by any stretch, are we? We're talking 30 plus for a couple of them. And there is that element of, and I obviously knew about McAtee, knew about Hutchinson because of the work they've done in the EFL, but other players coming in, and it's not a case of being willfully misinformed about them or uninformed about them. But yeah, no real idea. I mean, Douglas Luiz, of course, a wonderful player that we've seen in the Premier League. The question mark about his availability is always there. Absolutely always there. Zinchenko, a part of 2 big statuesque football clubs, a starting player, not necessarily for those clubs. So again, does it reflect where Forest find themselves in the market? How much they're allowed to spend? What is potentially going to bite them on the arse for what they've spent? I don't know. So when we talked about going into this season and needing to upgrade, part of the upgrade was making sure that it kept all the key players, keeping those key players fit, and then adding to the squad. And I think it's fair to say, and the point that you're both making is that the jury's out. The jury's out on these players that can hopefully consistently come into a side, but it's no good if it's a blossoming in a year's time, because then you've got Forest hanging on for dear life once again in the Premier League.
I think when they recruited, they probably looked at it. I haven't spoken to them about this. They probably looked at the team and said, where do we need to improve? They needed an Elanga replacement. They probably thought Undoy would hit the ground running more than he has, because he's international footballer, played Champions League. It was us or Napoli that he would sign for. So it shows he does have quality. It hasn't quite happened for him. Luiz was meant to be an upgrade in midfield, probably for Sangare, who's actually done pretty well overall. I think they probably, and Igor Jesus was Chris Wood's sort of successor and might still be it. Fullback feels like a real problem, because the fullbacks they bought in, there's a real big drop, as we said. Zinchenko just hasn't been what I thought he would be. I thought he'd be better than he has been. I know you have doubts over his defending, but he's just been miles off it. And Savona's a young player who arrived very late in the window, which goes to Nuno's issues, I think, as well, without dredging that back up. So that's a problem. And the other big one, it's really hard to find a third centre half when you've got Murillo and Milenkovic. I would probably play Jaya Cunha now when I see Morato's decision making, and I just think he's probably not the one. Against Everton, Dan, and we talked about Murillo and Milenkovic at Anfield, they're back. Dan, Elliot Anderson's dropping so deep to get on the ball. He's on their toes because Murillo passes it through lines, and then players are getting it on the half turn, and then we're able to attack much more. The gaps get bigger and bigger because Anderson's coming to get the ball. I just think, to me, Murillo is such a huge loss, and we saw it against Leicester. But when we get him back, will things just click back into place or not?
I hope so. We've got some tough games where we might not notice. But I think the thing with Murillo is his speed of which he does things. He does things so quickly that the opposition can't read it. Whereas I think with Morato, he takes that extra touch, and it's almost like he telegraphs that he's going to try and make that sort of forward pass through a line, and they intercept it more readily. That's what I notice between those two players, and that's ultimately why one of them's been touted as a potential superstar kind of centre back, I suppose. I think it's that what we're talking about here today is just a combination of things, isn't it? It feels like there's obviously the chaos of the management changes, there's recruiting players of a certain profile, there's injury list, there's the kind of confidence that just gets sapped because it's not been the season we all thought it was going to be with Europe and all that. It feels like at the minute it's a combination of things, and Dyche has done really well in his first few games to address that and get some results on the board. It's just now we need something else to kind of keep the momentum going. And, some players back from injury would be good, but it doesn't sound like there's much good news on that front, really, apart from Bakwa.
No, I would like a proper Chris Wood update. Dyche's updates are incredibly woolly on injuries. Like, players are making progress, they'll be back soon. I know every manager does it, but yeah, it's almost not really, this sounds like I'm redigging him out. It's almost not really worth asking about injuries because you get the same update on basically every player to some degree. But I don't know, all managers do it. But I would like to know what's happening with Chris Wood. I know people are really speculating about his absence, so hopefully we'll get a proper one. I mean, we could talk about this. Like Dan says, this is 100 pieces on the jigsaw that we could spend an hour talking about. Danny in the chat says, what about Morgan? I mean, we could talk about Morgan's role. He had a terrible game on Saturday, but he's up for Premier League Player of the Month, so generally I think he's playing well. He's got obviously showing the back injury. We'll do a proper Utrecht preview either tomorrow or Wednesday, but I would just really be resting as many key players as I can in that one. After, we'll take a word for Global Telemetrics, and then we'll put the league table up and talk about how we're all feeling, because a lot of people are obviously very worried about relegation, and we'll talk a bit more about that. But just pull out a quick word for Global Telemetrics, and this is with audio of an actual call and footage of recovering a car that was nicked.
Good evening, Global Telemetrics.
Hello, my car's I've had a ring back from your company, but my car's been stolen off the drive.
Have you spoken to the police at all?
No, I rung you first because of the tractor.
Yeah, no, that's fine, sir. Yeah, like I say, it's always best to ring us first.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I'd suggest doing is just give the police a call.
Yeah.
Report the vehicle as stolen. In the meantime, we'll get on the phone to our repatriation agents. We'll get them out to the location that we have for the vehicle.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, it's just Ben calling back from Global Telemetrics.
Yeah, I've just had a message from the police saying that at Mansfield somebody's got it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just going to let you know, repatriation agent's been in touch. They've gained entry.
Yeah.
Want to keep the vehicle for Soko, like I explained to you earlier. I think it's, just in case. They think it's a gang issue in the area. So they'll want to dust for prints and see if they match any of the ongoing investigations that they've got going on at the moment. So.
There you go. Short story with a message to worry about gang crime and also get your car protected.
Certainly a gear change, isn't it? That in a
wasn't it? Yeah.
Podcast. It was like a true crime. I was listening, going, "Wonder what
it was actually, wasn't it? Yeah.
I know. Yeah, it kept me engaged for the whole minute. Thanks, Global Telemetrics. Do get your vehicle protected and click the link in the description. Right, excuse me. I shall put the league table up. This is the bottom end of the table. Fulham look like they play well in a lot of games and lose a lot of games. Lost to Palace, who are obviously an impressive side yesterday. Leeds got a good draw against Liverpool. Lots of issues for Liverpool. And then West Ham got a point against Brighton. So we're outside the relegation zone. I think I've got my whole intro wrong because I thought West Ham had won that game for a while. So we are outside the relegation zone by a couple of points. Probably won't even edit that. Right. Prutz, loads of people worried that we are right in the mire. We're going to get relegated. Dyche, I've seen a lot in the chat saying Dyche is not the answer. He's terrible. He's got to go either now or the end of the season, etc., etc. When you look at that league table and that form table with lots of X's and a few ticks, how do you see where Forest are at?
Well, I've got a feeling it's going to be squeakier than it has been, obviously, last season. I mean, far squeakier. Wolves, you fear for them. Burnley, of course, you fear for them. West Ham being the mixed bag that they are. Leeds has shown a bit of fight. Fulham have got the quality. Obviously, the debate about where Marco Silva potentially goes next might be something that unsettles them a little bit. But I would say, given what I've seen so far this season, then, yeah, Forest have got to be right now concerned about where they do find themselves and looking over the shoulder, because the table's not lying right now, given what, say, the weekend brought, what necessarily other games that we've seen over the course of the season so far brought, because you can't get carried away. Forest were getting carried away with their league position last season, and they can't get carried away with it now. They've got to be confident or reinstill that confidence, going off what Dan said, looking at a side that looks to be slightly low on it. And it might not be pretty. It might be akin to what we saw with Nuno's first season, which was absolutely about consolidation and safety, wasn't it? It was about getting things right at one end of the pitch and using the attacking ability going forward to see off teams at the other end of the pitch. So it might be a transitional season. It might be a holding pattern of a season where it's about safety, because Forest have put themselves there by virtue of what happened with Nuno, what happened with Ange, and where they find themselves with Sean Dyche. Whether you rate the way that he goes about playing football, he's got a very effective ability with teams in the Premier League, but it has always been more about making sure that these teams are safe rather than flourishing. So any aspirations that came from thinking that Forest got Europa League football that then could be transferred into Champions League football this season, I think it's been not a reality check, because that sounds a bit blunt and a bit disrespectful to the fans, because they followed a team that was on a glorious run and journey last season. And when you go into the end of that season with the players that you got, the management that you got, you can only think that it's going to be even better next. But I think it's shown how quickly things can change. And I think now, climbing over what Christmas is, then they've got to be very, very wary of what's coming their way.
I think, this comment here from Too Many Phils probably sums up quite a lot of it. What I was going to say is we were in a massive hole when Dyche was appointed. Since he came in, we've actually, results-wise, done pretty well. We're in a better place considerably in the league table. Maybe not in positions, but points we've improved. So I think we've done well. Dyche has done well in general. The last two games have been really concerning. I throw the Wolves game into it as well. I think we played terribly in that game. And won against an awful team. And obviously we were crap against Everton. But if we continue we have points per game wise under Dyche, I think we'll be all right. The other factor in it is the teams at the bottom aren't all crap this year. Like Sunderland have thrown the cat among the pigeons a bit. Leeds suddenly show some fight. You know, as Prut said, they were terrible against us. Leeds fans wanted Farker out, and then in a week they've got 4 points against City, Liverpool and Chelsea and played really well. So now we panic about them. West Ham have improved under Nuno, so now we panic about them. So I think we're probably in this ride for quite a while this season. It's going to be up and down. Now is a down. Can we beat Spurs? And then we'll all feel much better. Can we get points against Fulham? Then we've got City, which you worry about. And then we've got Everton at home again. So the next 4 games, we could get 9 points. We could get 0. Or we could get 12, of course. And that probably is a factor of where we are as a club. So I think we'll be all right still. But I can understand totally why people are worried. I was very calm. Now I'm less calm. So I understand what people are saying. There's a couple of comments in the chat that I'll put up about January in 1 minute. But Dan, how are you feeling about where we're at when you see that league table?
I'm more worried at the minute than I have been, because I'd hoped that Leeds, like you say, would have perhaps dropped away. I think Burnley are kind of dropping away a bit, to the point where, you know, there should be 2 teams that we can stay clear of, but it's a case of that battle between the other teams down there. Some couple of huge games coming up, right? Fulham and Everton are huge, not just because of history with them and all that sort of stuff, but more because where the pressure points rise for Dyche and where you really start to feel like the pressure mounts is if you can't get results against those two, because we've had all our games against the teams below us for the first like half of the season. So now to keep some momentum going, we have to get a result from somewhere. I kind of think the Spurs game might suit us more than those, because to some extent we're the underdogs going into that and at home, and maybe there's a little bit of fragility to Spurs. So maybe we could get something there that again settles us down. But it's, for me, unfortunately, you're just constantly looking for that next like stepping stone to just keep the confidence or the momentum behind the manager going, as opposed to suddenly thinking that we're going to get 9 or 12 points out of a run of games. It's more a case of, can we win 1 in 4? So there's always just enough backing and enough momentum to kind of keep us going. Because if we get to Christmas having not beaten Fulham or Everton, it probably starts to really feel like we're under pressure there because of the table where it is. I'm more worried, mainly because of just the injuries keep mounting up. You know, we're struggling to put a team out that I feel is going to win some of these games because we're missing 2 or 3 key players.
Yeah, I think this is good. Plays nicely into this, Dan. Well done. Just quickly, Daniel Hall here. We have to buy and strengthen in January. We did nothing last January. I don't think we don't see the books, Dan, but I don't know if we've got any money to do that. I feel like kind of it's going to have to be more internal strengthening, isn't it? Like Aina, Murillo, hopefully Chris Woods, those guys ride to the rescue more than anything.
Yeah, I mean the Cuiabano from Botafogo might come back. They've finished their season now. Whether he can get up to speed, I don't know, as another fullback option. I guess you could look at the loans for Zinchenko and Douglas Luiz. I don't know if we've got an option to kind of cancel them and use those wages towards someone else. I think fullback, absolutely. If we can find a reasonably experienced fullback that can fill in for another, say, 10 games between now and the end of the season, that's of a level where the rest of the defence can kind of trust him, if you like, and not have to sort of lead him through games, that would be a massive improvement. And then it's that central midfield now, though, isn't it, with Yatesy out and Sangare going off to AFCON, probably. That becomes another concern. If Luiz cannot basically stay fit for the second half of the season, you probably need to address that as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Prots, isn't it? I mean, I love Nico Dominguez. I think he's a great player and should arguably be in the team anyway right now. But you can't have 2 central midfielders for December and January if Douglas Luiz and Zinchenko, who could play there, don't come back and Yates is out for a month or something.
No, and I mean, to kind of flip it as a more of a positive, if Luiz is back, that Luiz Anderson midfield is pretty mouthwatering if you get both players at the levels that we know they can do, because that's what Luiz was brought in for, wasn't it? To facilitate Elliott and how good he is, but also to really kind of up the levels in the centre of the pitch. And again, that's with the greatest respect to Sangare and in particular Yatesy, given what he brings both as a player and as a person. So, yeah, it's slightly concerning times, and I'm wary that we don't get too carried away. A comment was saying about there's just 2 defeats in 8, which I think is absolutely right to emphasise as well. I just think, as ever with a performance like there was at the weekend, it's just the manner of it, and then suddenly you can start seeing these, or thinking that these little seeds are going to grow into little kind of shoots of concern and worry. But this is what the owner wanted for the football club, to be a big football club in big chats at the right end of the table. And part of that is getting your recruitment right, getting the people that do the recruitment in the building to be the right people as well, and to provide whoever's in charge of that specific moment with the right players. Now, a big part of that is, of course, FFP and or PSR, and what that is, and what Forest find themselves in with regards to that. And we're not party to the books, are we? And absolutely right. But you've got to hopefully trust in the people that are in that position, that the right players can be brought in. And if not, the right work can be done to manoeuvre players out that haven't actually stepped up. So, yeah, plenty of food for thought. Again, with that, I'm just trying to keep us on an even keel with regards to what we've seen, because what you're seeing on these, and in particular in Europe, I mean, it's slightly different at the back end of Angie's reign. I've spoken to Luke Chambers, who was at the game, when he said it took quite a deafening turn, didn't it? When just on his last knock-ins. But seen what Malmo meant to people, and without getting carried away with the romance of it, but what Forest did and what Forest are right now is broadly a really heavy collective, and they need to keep a sight of that. And if there is the merest hint that you've got players that aren't putting a shift in, then that's what the manager's there for, to nip that in the bud. But I think, and again, I'm not just piggybacking great comments, because there's lots of very, very good comments, is somebody saying along the lines of, this is going to be one of those seasons that you've got to grin and bear it. Last season was climbing the heights and scaling everything and it being an utter joy. It can't be that every year. And maybe this year is going to be getting nestled in and getting ready for the long run. So have fun, everyone.
Yeah.
You come back
and
next
it's only
season.
December.
It's always two ways you can spin everything, isn't there? Like 2 defeats in 8 sounds really good, and that's what gives me hope we'll be all right. I see Owen in the chat saying that, the manner of the defeats is probably
right though. He's absolutely right.
I think he is right.
And that's what worries fans and concerns fans. And I defer obviously to people that are there home and away every single minute. If you're seeing that, absolutely right that you say, "Come on, lads, pull your fingers out." It's not what Forest have been built on for the last couple of years, has it? Really, under Coops, under Nuno, again, forgetting the Ange period. This latest incarnation hasn't been built on that. It's been built on humility, hard work, and quality going forward, and a solid defence. Get back to that.
Yeah, although I actually thought we played all right against Brighton, apart from 20 minutes where he could have conceded 5 goals, but apart from that, we weirdly played all right. Yeah. But yeah, the last 2 definitely a particular concern. I mean, we'll wrap things up now because we've done loads. We could have done another hour. People saying, "Why are you talking about Edu?" I saw a comment like, "We could do loads on anything to why we are where we are." There's a million factors. We've had 3 managers, so I don't think we can expect to be flying in mid-table, pushing for top 6 and all that kind of stuff. But
I think Prutz said as well about it feels a bit, well, he mentioned when Nuno came in and that second half of that season when he came in, and it does feel like that, really. Like one good result and then one bad result, and we're just on edge because we're so near the bottom. We're just on edge that the bad result, we feel like it's going to turn into this big sign that it's all going wrong, but then we might go and beat Spurs and feel all right again. And that's where we are, unfortunately,
And another similarity is a lot of people in the fan base probably aren't won over by the manager. Like a lot of people when Nuno came in weren't won over by him. A lot of people I see in the chat, Sean Dyche's detractors are, sort of in the chat today, and he's still got to win over some people.
Such a good point, Matt, because we were chatting about Nuno, weren't we, when he first? Because obviously there was a huge emotional pull of what Coops had done and the change and what was needed. And there were people that were chatting to us about it and saying, well, he might have done pretty well at Wolves and it tracked off. And then you looked at his time at Spurs, and then you looked at him falling out with players abroad. And but that's a very good point to make, that there's question, that there were questions of what Nuno did. And if anyone had said that you had that manager a couple of games away from getting Forest in the Champions League quite quickly, you'd have probably gone, really? I'm not sure about that.
And then you'd be on your 3rd manager by November, and it'd be Sean Dyche. And what would people have said?
That is a swing, isn't it? Yeah. So there is, there is an element of perspective needed, but I thoroughly understand if there's not. If you are emotionally attached to Forest and it's not floating your boat at the moment, you, as ever, well within your rights to say what is getting on your nerves about it.
Right. If you have enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership or Patreon, or a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Really good chat today. Really enjoyed it. We could do, as I mentioned, could do a lot more. Anything you want to add, Dan, before we go?
Well, one other positive we can look at is Zach Abbott got a decent run out, didn't he, in the Premier League? That's a positive for us, I suppose. On the back of that game, that was about the only one I could list, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else from Saturday. There's literally nothing, to be honest. Apart from Zach,
Step forward for him,
Prutz, anything you want to
add? A bit of context. Derby well and truly got battered at the weekend, if that makes Forest fans happy. Leicester, again, East Midlands rivals doing their thing in a different division. So maybe a bit of perspective when things aren't quite so shiny is needed for this little portion of the world.
Fair points, one and all. Right, we'll be back tomorrow with Emily and Matt Davies Adams, either a listener Q&A or Utrecht preview, and then we'll have something on Wednesday. Dan Story's booked in for Wednesday with AN Other, and then obviously we'll have a Utrecht post-match show and hopefully an opposition preview. Right, thanks to Dan, thanks to Prutz. If you're one of the 380 plus people with us live, do hit like, that'd be really appreciated. Or if you're watching later, that would also be appreciated. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.